A wealthy billionaire mocked his waitress's thick accent in front of his business partners. Everyone at the table laughed, treating her like entertainment instead of a human being. Her response in the next 30 seconds silenced the entire restaurant and changed his life forever. The evening settled over the Ambassador Club like expensive perfume, all subtle luxury and understated power radiating from every polished surface and hushed conversation. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light across tables where deals worth millions were discussed over wine that cost more per bottle than most people earned in a week. The restaurant catered exclusively to the city's elite, a place where wealth was assumed and status measured in whispers and knowing glances rather than obvious displays. At table 12 sat Harrison Blake and his business associates, men whose combined net worth could fund small countries, whose influence shaped markets and policies, whose arrogance had been earned through success and reinforced through years of people telling them yes. And approaching their table with a notepad and practiced smile was Elena Kovac, about to become the target of their cruel entertainment and the catalyst for a humbling none of them would ever forget. Before this story takes you into what happened in that restaurant, pause for just a moment. If you believe in the dignity of all work, in respect regardless of someone's position, and in the power of grace under pressure to expose character in ways comfort never will, please like this video. Share it with someone who needs to remember that accents tell stories of courage and survival. And subscribe to Untold Kindness Journey. Your support helps us tell stories that prove true class has nothing mas to do with money and everything to do with how you treat people who can't fight back. Elena had immigrated to America from Serbia 3 years earlier, fleeing a country still scarred by war and economic collapse, arriving with 2 suitcases and a doctorate in molecular biology that American institutions refused to recognize without years of additional certification she couldn't afford. She'd left behind a prestigious research position, a comfortable life, and her elderly parents who couldn't make the journey, all for the promise of safety and opportunity for her young daughter. But opportunity in America, she'd discovered, looked very different depending on what you looked like and how you sounded when you spoke. Her thick Serbian accent, the slight struggle she had with certain English pronunciations, became barriers that kept her PhD relegated to irrelevance while she waited tables to pay rent and send money home. Harrison Blake was 58 years old, founder of Blake Capital Management, a man whose investment decisions moved markets and whose opinion carried weight in circles where weight mattered. He'd been born wealthy, inherited more wealth, and multiplied it through combinations of luck, ruthlessness, and being in the right rooms with the right people at the right times. Success had taught him that the world bent to accommodate him, that rules applied to others but not to him, that people existed in hierarchies with him firmly at the top. He'd never questioned this worldview because nothing in his experience had ever challenged it. Nothing had ever suggested that the waitress bringing his appetizer might be worth his respect rather than his dismissal. Elena approached table 12 with the professional warmth she'd perfected over countless shifts, her notepad ready, her smile genuine despite exhaustion from already working 6 hours with 4 more to go. "Good evening, gentlemen. My name is Elena, and I will be taking care of you tonight. May I start you with something to drink?" Her accent colored each word, the Serbian cadence shaping her English in ways that were distinctive and clear but marked her immediately as foreign, as other, as someone these men would instinctively place below them in their mental hierarchy of human worth. Harrison looked up from his conversation, his eyes sweeping over Elena with the kind of dismissive assessment that reduced people to their utility. He didn't respond to her question, instead turning to his associates with an exaggerated expression of confusion. "I'm sorry, did anyone understand what she just said?" His voice carried across nearby tables, deliberately loud, deliberately cruel. The men at his table laughed, emboldened by their leader's mockery. "Maybe she's speaking alien," one suggested. "Perhaps we need a translator," another added. Their laughter grew louder, feeding off each other's cruelty, turning Elena's presence into entertainment, her accent into a punchline, her humanity into something dismissible. Elena's smile didn't falter, though something flickered behind her eyes, pain masked by years of practice at swallowing humiliation from people who considered themselves her betters. "I apologize if my accent is difficult," she said carefully, her voice steady despite the heat rising in her cheeks. "I can speak more slowly if that helps. But Harrison wasn't interested in communication. He was interested in performance, in showing his associates his dominance, his ability to mock without consequence. "Oh, she apologizes," he said with theatrical surprise. "How quaint. Tell me, sweetheart, where exactly did you learn English?" "A correspondence course from a country we bombed." His associates erupted in laughter, the kind of laughter that comes easy to men who've never faced consequences for their cruelty. The restaurant had gone quiet. Other diners watching this public humiliation with expressions ranging from discomfort to disgust. But no one intervened, because intervening meant challenging Harrison Blake, and challenging Harrison Blake meant risking business relationships, social standing, access to the circles where power lived. Elena stood there absorbing their mockery, her notepad trembling slightly in hands that wanted to throw it in Harrison's smug face but couldn't, because she needed this job, needed the money it provided, needed to survive in a country that promised opportunity but delivered humiliation. She could have walked away, could have sent another server, could have let their cruelty slide off her back like she'd done countless times before. But something inside Elena made a different choice. She looked directly at Harrison Blake, meeting his eyes with a steadiness that made his laughter falter slightly, and when she spoke, her voice carried clearly through the silent restaurant. "You are correct that my English is not perfect, Mr. Blake. I learned it as my fourth language after Serbian, Russian, and German. My accent exists because I did not grow up with the privilege of being born in an English-speaking country. I earned my education through scholarships while working nights because my family had no money. I have a doctorate in molecular biology from the University of Belgrade, where I researched cancer treatments before immigrating to America. I left my career, my country, and my family to give my daughter opportunities I never had. And I work this job because your country does not recognize my credentials. Without certifications, I cannot afford while supporting a child alone." The silence that followed was absolute, the kind of quiet that feels physical, pressing down on everyone present. Elena wasn't finished. Her voice remained calm but carried an edge now, dignity wielded like a weapon against mockery. "My accent tells the story of courage, Mr. Blake. It tells of learning new languages, adapting to foreign cultures, surviving wars and economic collapse, building new lives from nothing in countries that look down on people like me. What story does your accent tell? That you were born in the right place to the right family? That you never had to struggle for anything? Never had to prove yourself in a language that wasn't your native tongue? Never had to rebuild your entire existence in a place where people mock you for entertainment? Your accent is an accident of birth. Mine is a badge of survival." Harrison's face had gone from amused to pale, his associates no longer laughing but staring at their plates, suddenly fascinated by silverware patterns. Other diners had started clapping, a slow applause that built into something louder. People standing to applaud Elena's words, their respect for her courage and dignity overwhelming their fear of offending Harrison Blake. The restaurant manager approached, concerned about the disruption, but Harrison raised his hand, stopping her. His voice came out rough, stripped of its earlier arrogance. "Please sit down." The manager hesitated, confused. Harrison gestured to the empty chair at their table. "Ms. Kovacs, please sit. I need to speak with you." Eleanor's professional mask cracked slightly, uncertainty replacing the fierce dignity that had carried her through the confrontation. "I cannot, Mr. Blake. I am working." Harrison stood, his body language completely changed, shoulders slumped, arrogance evaporated. "Then I'll stand. Please give me 5 minutes." His associates exchanged glances, never having seen their ruthless leader humbled, never having witnessed him asking rather than demanding. Eleanor set down her notepad and faced him, waiting, her posture straight, despite exhaustion and the emotional toll of the last few minutes. Harrison's words came slowly, each one clearly costing him something. "I am deeply, profoundly sorry. What I said was inexcusable. You're absolutely right. I've never struggled for anything in my life. I was born into wealth and opportunity, and I've used that privilege to look down on people who've earned everything they have. Your accent isn't something to mock. It's evidence of strength I've never had to develop, of adaptability I've never needed, of courage I probably don't possess. I'm ashamed of myself, and I'm ashamed that I'm 58 years old and needed a waitress to teach me basic human decency." His voice cracked on the last words, genuine emotion breaking through decades of practiced control. What happened next shocked everyone in the restaurant, including Elena herself. Harrison pulled out his phone and made a call, his voice firm despite the emotional conversation he'd just had. "This is Harrison Blake. I'm calling about a molecular biology position we discussed funding at the University Research Center. I have a candidate, Dr. Elena Kovacs. I want her credentials evaluated immediately, and I'll personally fund whatever certifications or coursework are required for American recognition." He looked at Elena while speaking. "She's brilliant, experienced, and deserves to be doing research instead of waiting tables, because narrow-minded people like me created systems that keep talented immigrants trapped in service positions." Elena's eyes filled with tears, her hand covering her mouth, unable to process what was happening. Harrison continued, his transformation complete. "I'm also establishing a scholarship fund in your name for immigrant professionals seeking American certification, and I'm funding it with $5 million. People shouldn't have to choose between their careers and survival because they had the courage to start over in a new country." He turned to his associates, his voice carrying authority again but directed differently now. "Gentlemen, our business can wait. Tonight I'm taking Dr. Kovacs and her daughter to dinner, a real dinner, where I'll apologize properly and learn about the work she did in Serbia. You're welcome to join us if you can promise to listen more than you speak and to treat her with the respect I failed to show." Within 3 months, Elena was working at the University Research Center, her certifications completed, her doctorate recognized, her research on cancer treatments resumed and properly funded. Harrison became not just a benefactor but a friend, someone humbled by his own cruelty into becoming a better person, someone who used his wealth and influence to tear down barriers he'd helped build. Through years of casual discrimination and unexamined privilege, he spoke publicly about what happened that night, using his story of shame to challenge other wealthy people to examine their own behavior, to consider who they dismissed and why, to recognize that accents and appearances told stories of survival they'd never had to live. Elena's daughter grew up watching her mother reclaim the career she'd sacrificed, watching a billionaire learn humility, watching proof that speaking truth to power sometimes actually changed things. And Harrison Blake, who'd built his fortune on aggressive dominance, learned that real power wasn't about making people feel small, but about using privilege to lift others up, about recognizing that the waitress with the thick accent might be the most accomplished person in any room if you bothered to see her as fully human rather than as someone who existed to serve you.